Greetings, everyone. I want to tell you, writing teachers, about something that might surprise you. But first, here's a little background. I was talking to a couple of my colleagues about how we mark our students' papers in our writing classes, especially how do we mark the grammar mistakes. One of them told me that she thinks that students get upset or feel dejected when they see grammar mistakes marked on their essays, so she only marks a few mistakes on each paper. Now, the other colleague, he agreed, and he said that he thinks students especially get disappointed if they see red marks. So he never uses red, but instead uses black ink for indicating grammar mistakes. He believes that students associate red marks with something bad. These were just impressions that they got from looking at the expressions on their students' faces when they gave their marked papers back to them. In other words, they had no real proof about how their students felt about seeing grammar mistakes marked on their papers. So I decided to conduct a survey of students to find out how they really felt about getting red marks, which indicated grammar mistakes, on their writing assignments. So when I give students feedback on their writing assignments, I want them to notice three things. For example, here is the first paragraph that a student named Karen wrote. So she was describing her roommate Lily. And you can see I've put in green, underlined green, some points that stood out. And you can see in her first sentence, for example, Lily has been the perfect roommate in many ways. So I like that she used the has been, the present perfect there, which is kind of advanced for her level. And then later in the third sentence, she is a quiet girl. And then she puts in a comma so she doesn't talk too much, which is really good. She's got a compound sentence there. She used comma correctly, and I wanted that to stand out, that I noticed it. And then at the very end of this little paragraph, she has as soon as possible. And this is something that I've noticed she had struggled with before, and she got it right, so I put in green there. So I'll also mark ideas and details that she would write besides grammar, but just for this example here, I marked some grammar. Now, I also mark in red grammar mistakes, and these can be, wording, and these are different things that they can use then to improve their grammar. So you can see in her paragraph there, Lily has been the perfect roommate in many ways. First, Lily always give me. Now, I don't want to just tell her, okay, here's the mistake, change it. Here's a mistake, change it. So I give it a little hints in the margin there. So I put an NF, which means she had a noun form mistake, which is the word ways. Roommate in many ways is what you need to change. And then in the next sentence, she writes, first, Lily always give me useful advice. So I give her the hint VF, indicating that there's a verb form mistake there. And she would try to find the give, to change to gives. Now, and then you can see in the next line, I've circled much period but. Okay, so there's a grammar mistake there, and there's several ways that she can correct it. And I don't tell her how she can correct it. She could put a period in a transitional expression, or she could put a comma and then make it a compound sentence. So by putting these little codes in here in red, I've indicated ways that seem like a puzzle to them. And it can be stimulating for students to try to discover what their mistakes were. Then the third kind of mark that I put on papers is to show them how they can improve the content in their papers by adding details or adding some examples. And I'll do this by marking in blue to indicate where I think they could add some details. So you can see the last sentence there of this paper. She says, but if you need some help, she will give you a hand as soon as possible. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. It would be interesting for her to tell me an example of how Lily gave her a hand when she needed it. So when I returned Karn's first draft, this is how it looked with all the marks. Then she used my comments to revise her paper, and after a few days, she gave me her second draft. And this is what it looked like. So you can see I marked in yellow. I wouldn't do that for her, but I marked in yellow for this purpose to let you see all the changes that she made by using my marks. So as you can see in the first line there, she changed way to ways, and she changed give to gives, and she decided on that second line to put in the transitional expression however. And then I was very impressed with the example she put in there. For example, 2 years ago, I got a bad grade on an important exam, and I was very sad. As my roommate and best friend, Lily sat next to me, and she didn't say anything. After 2 hours, I started to become calm. Lily held my hand and told me I deserved to have a second chance. During that nice conversation, she gave me a lot of useful advice, and she helped me pass my next important test. So during a typical term, students have received this kind of feedback on 6 essays. So to find out if my colleagues' assumptions were correct that students do not like to see red on their papers, at the end of the term, I gave my students this short survey. And you can see, it says on your essays, I often use different colors to give you feedback. Green for good, red for grammar mistakes, and blue for more details and examples. So here's the hypothetical. Let's say that I can only give you one type of feedback. Which one would you choose? And then they can choose. I would want green to indicate good parts. I would want red to indicate my grammar mistakes. I would want blue to indicate places that I need more details and examples. So if those colleagues who thought students were upset by red marks, the grammar mistakes, then it would seem that they would not choose that option. In fact, they would probably prefer the green, the good parts option. But now, before I tell you the results, I'd like you to just think about what you would choose if you were an ESL student who was trying to improve your writing skills. Remember, after the teacher returns your first draft, you'll be able to use those marks to write an improved second draft. Okay, so here's the results. 11% said they would want green to indicate the good parts. 50% said if they could only choose one color, they would choose the red to indicate their grammar mistakes. And then 38% said they would want blue to indicate places that needed more details and examples. So contrary to what some teachers think, a majority of students actually want to see red on their papers. And they overwhelmingly chose the marks like red and blue, which identify places where they could improve their papers. If the teachers use red and blue marks in ways that can lead students to better writing skills, their students will see that the teacher is on their side and working with them as a teammate, not a judge. So ironically, I've been able to use these red marks as a kind of reward, which I can withhold. If I have students who consistently turn their assignments in late, I tell them that the next time they do that, I'll mark in green all the good parts of their paper, but I won't mark their grammar in red. I won't mark their grammar. This threat never fails to motivate students to turn their assignments in on time. They want to see red on their papers because they know that's going to help them improve their writing skills. So in the notes below, I'll include links to more details about how I've used these types of marks to help students and more about how they've responded to them. So thank you for watching.